Everyone loves Tyrannosaurus. I won't list the reasons because we'd be here all day. However, the evolutionary history of the Tyrannosaurus genus has always seemed rather myopic. Species evolve into other species more quickly than new genera appear. Where are all the other Tyrannosaur species? Many researchers have tried to justify splitting already known specimens of Tyrannosaurus into new species. But one anomalous set of fossils from New Mexico have always shown themselves to be too unique to account for. Now, a new study has finally put a name to them, and they represent a brand new Tyrannosaurus. Let's meet Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis. The tyrant dinosaurs, the tyrannosaurids, were the top predators across North America and Asia throughout the late Cretaceous. I personally believe they were more prevalent, and the evidence just hasn't been found yet, but whatever. These dinosaurs evolved in the early Cretaceous from skinny little beasts that skittered under the feet and bellies of the giant Carnosaurian hatchet-faced dinosaurs. They ballooned in size and robusticity at the beginning of the late Cretaceous. Their arms shrunk, they lost a finger, their feet got better at feeding, the brains got more sensitive, and their skulls got shorter and thicker. This ruling family of railroad spike-toothed beasts culminated in their largest member, the eponymous Tyrannosaurus rex. Before I go on, I must quickly run through an alpha taxonomy lesson. Taxonomy is the term used to describe the practice and science of classifying animals into categories. The rules and how everything is organized has changed over time, and things are always changing thanks to DNA and fossil animals. However, the basics that should be taught across all intro biology classes is this chart. The highest label is domain, followed by kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. There are classifications in between and underneath all of these to help better differentiate between extremely closely related animals. The most basic classification for an animal is species. This is expressed by a first name and a last name. The first name is more generic, while the last name is more specific, the opposite of people names. For example, humans belong to the genus Homo and the species Sapiens. Everyone's favorite tyrant lizard king actually belongs to the species Rex and the genus Tyrannosaurus. There can be multiple species underneath a genus, like how domestic dogs are Canis familiaris, while the wolf is Canis lupus. All of this will make sense when we begin to talk about the differences between the species of Tyrannosaurus. Everyone refers to the animal as T.rex, but we should technically only refer to it as the genus Tyrannosaurus, since every extinct genus had to have had more than one species. Enough digression, let's get into Tyrannosaur evolution. The actual evolution and various lineages that led directly to Tyrannosaurus rex as part of the very small and specific Tyrannosaurinae tribe designation remains unknown. There are plenty of spots along the entire tyrant dinosaur tree to show how they evolved into Tyrannosaurus rex, but not much in the way of how the specific genus and species of Tyrannosaurus rex evolved from its closest relatives. Tyrannosaurus rex itself seems to suddenly appear in the latest part of the latest Cretaceous, a chunk of time called the Maastrichtian. Absolutely no super close relatives of the animal have ever been unambiguously reported from North America prior to the time that Tyrannosaurus rex pops up. On the contrary, its closest relatives were all Asian, Tarbosaurus and Zhushangtyrannus being those close relatives. In order to explain all this, the leading hypothesis has been that early Tyrannosaurians evolved in North America and then migrated to Asia, became isolated in Asia, and then migrated back into North America when land bridges reappeared. The other part of the hypothesis is that Tyrannosaurus rex is either a transcontinental immigrant or the descendant of such immigrants. This is based on the fact that there are older tyrannosaurs in Asia that are very closely related to Tyrannosaurus rex, the aforementioned Tarbosaurus and Zhusheng tyrannus. There aren't any yet known from the exact time as Tyrannosaurus rex. On the other hand, some have hypothesized that Tyrannosaurus rex really is just an indigenous North American lineage of robust Tyrannosauran. It's complicated, and only more fossils can help figure out the puzzle. One possible piece was redescribed in 2024. Paleontologists Sebastian Dahlmann, Mark Lowen, R. Alexander Pyron, Stephen Jasinski, D. Edward Malinzak, Spencer Lucas, Anthony Fiorillo, Philip Curry, and Nicholas Longridge published their paper redescribing the remains of a tyrannosaur from the late Campanian to early Maastrichtian ages of New Mexico that may prove to be a new species of the Tyrannosaurus genus. All the way back in the 1980s, scientists from the New Mexico Museum of Natural History were out near Elephant Butte, prospecting for fossils eroding from outcrops of the Hall Lake Formation. They found a theropod dinosaur specimen that only got fully collected by paleontologist Dave Gillette in 1983. This specimen, NMMNH P3698, consists of a partial skull, including the right postorbital and squamosal bones, left palatine, a fragment of the maxilla bone, and the left dentary, right splenial, prearticular, angular, and articular parts of the lower jaws, some isolated teeth, and associated chevrons or tail ribs. The specimen specifically comes from the Hall Lake Formation, which is part of the McRae group located at Elephant Butte in the NMMNH locality 343 near Kettle Top Butte in Sierra County, New Mexico. Thanks to the number of bones preserved, Gillette knew it was extremely closely related to Tyrannosaurus rex. As such, he left it as Tyrannosaurus sp, or a new but indeterminate species of Tyrannosaurus, or just a unique specimen of Tyrannosaurus rex. Gillette's interpretation of this fossil was accepted by many other academics, but not all. It's science after all. Using the minute differences between the jaw and those jaws of Tyrannosaurus, paleontologists Tom Lehman and Kenneth Carpenter argued in 1990 that the jaw was diagnostic enough to be considered a separate genus, but did not name one. In a 2000 review of Tyrannosaurid material from New Mexico, paleontologists Thomas Carr and Thomas Williamson expressed their disagreement with the 1990 work of Carpenter and Lehman, suggesting once again that there weren't really enough traits in the jaw to differentiate it from Tyrannosaurus material. So, what actually makes it stand out? The Elephant Butte Tyrannosaur is long and low in profile. The back of the jaw that connects it to the skull is narrow and upturns relatively sharply. This is not seen in the same bone of Tyrannosaurus rex. There are a few much smaller details among the Elephant Butte fragments that may help provide further traits to differentiate them, but there are external factors that can help to do this as well. For example, the rock formation from which the fossils eroded has fudgy dates. In other words, the exact dating of the rock layers has gone back and forth over the years. When you cannot easily date a rock unit using radiometric dating methods that involve radioactive isotopes in the elements in the rocks and minerals, you have to rely on the fossils found within the rock unit. For example, you will never find a trilobite fossil in Cretaceous rocks, Tyrannosaurus fossils in early Cretaceous rocks, or Post-Desuchus in Jurassic rocks. The actual fossil species used in these sorts of analyses tend to be critters that leave behind a lot of remains, such as small-shelled organisms. These animals can evolve relatively quickly, leaving behind very obvious change from one rock layer to the next. Or they can evolve relatively slowly, making differences between species and layers more obvious. But the abundance of remains is what makes them good markers. In layers that are more terrestrial than marine, you gotta get creative. Instead of ammonites, clams, brachiopods, or microscopic test-secreting mini-beasts, you may need to rely on the fossils of vertebrates. This is what has been used to date the Hall Lake Formation historically. The common fossils of the turtle Compsomys has been used, but an interesting horned dinosaur also got caught up in the mix. A horned dinosaur specimen was uncovered from the Hall Lake Formation in 1997, and its remains were attributed to the already known long-frilled Torosaurus. Torosaurus is a contemporary of Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus rex, appearing in the western North American fossil record 68 million years ago. The presence of a Torosaurus in the same rock layer as a specimen attributed to Tyrannosaurus proved an unconscious bias that this layer must have been quite young, near the end of the age of the dinosaurs. All this biostratigraphy resulted in a generic date of the Lancian faunal stage of the late Cretaceous, which was 70.6 to 66 million years ago. Not bad, but could be better. Work done in the late 2010s delved further into these rock units to get a better handle on their times. Using uranium-lead dating, Jeffrey Amato and colleagues got dates out of a few ash layers in the Jose Creek Formation, directly below the Hall Lake Formation, plus one from the very start of the Hall Lake Formation. The lowest of these ash layers dates to approximately 75 million years ago, then 74.9, 74.6, 75.2, and finally the Hall Lake layer at 73.2. That 75.2 layer seems to be out of sync, which probably means it was reworked from older layers. This makes the formation late Campanian to early Maastrichtian in age. These dates are weirdly old for the Elephant Butte tyrannosaur to be a Tyrannosaurus rex. It can be no older than 73 million years. However, since it's so close to this layer and so much lower than dinosaurs that are more common around the 66 million year mark, like the Titanosaur Alamosaurus, the authors argue that this tyrannosaur should not be a Tyrannosaurus rex based on stratigraphy. Obviously, we are talking about a period of less than 10 million years, so the time difference really isn't quite large enough to start thinking this tyrannosaur is a new genus. It also turns out that the Torosaurus specimen represented a much older species, so it was redescribed in 2022 as Sierraceratops, and it turned out to be much more closely related to the southern chasmosaurs of Mexico and Texas. For all intents and purposes, it seems as though these rocks really do not belong to the very ends of the age of the dinosaurs, being a record of the handful of millions of years leading up to that big asteroid strike. So, what the hell is this mystery tyrannosaur then? The author team had to do the Venn diagram game. Sebastian Dahlmann and his team argued that there were a ton of small differences in every single bone collected, setting it apart from the Tyrannosaurus rex species. Since there are so many fossils of this species, there actually is a good enough sample size here to actually be semi-confident in saying that the differences represent a difference in species. The differences are subtle, but they consistently appear outside of the variations seen in all other Tyrannosaurus rex specimens. After all, even the Mongolian Tarbosaurus has been argued to be a species of the Tyrannosaurus genus in the past. So, the authors contend there should be enough proof in this pudding. And in the end, the team argues it's not a Tyrannosaurus rex. It's something older and more primitive. Therefore, they named this new old species Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis, a large tyrannosaur that thrived in southern North America for a long time before evolving into Tyrannosaurus rex and taking over the continent. This author team argues that this species may help to solve the Tyrannosaurus origin puzzle, or at least alleviate some of the burden. It seems as though the biggest and most robust of the tyrannosaurs were restricted to southern North America. This area either had less of these animals or preserved them less often as they are less common. Interestingly, there are fragments from the in-between times that would help fill in all the gaps. For example, there's an upper jaw fragment from the Texan Javelina Formation dating to the middle of the Maastrichtian. Now that we have Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis, what do we know about it? Not much, unfortunately. Its world had many similarities but also many differences to the world in which Tyrannosaurus rex lived. The ecosystems of the new tyrant are not yet fully understood, owing to this whole new species debacle, but some things are known. Instead of Triceratops or Torosaurus, Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis brushed shoulders with the square-frilled Sierraceratops, an unknown species of the gigantic titanosaur Alamosaurus, and an as-yet unnamed giant hadrosaur. I'm sure many other groups of dinosaurs were around at the time, but their stories are yet to be told. Dromaeosaurs likely prowled around looking for small hadrosaurs to nab. Pachycephalosaurs, nodosaurs, ankylosaurs, and oviraptorosaurs may have been this far south as well. At around the same time interval but in Mexico lived Paracentosaurus, a North American dinocheirid dinosaur. It's possible relatives of this animal were farther north than there is evidence for. Only time will reveal the secrets of this unique region in time. Before we continue, let's bring in
Mr. Man from Animal Planet's The Most Extreme
to get a general idea of just how big this giant tyrannosaur really was. Based on the sizes of the fossils preserved with Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis and some quick maths, the critter was about the same size as some of the largest Tyrannosaurus rex specimens known. So a critter of 12 meters, 40-ish feet, and 8 tons is not out of the realm of possibility. For example, the lower jaw is larger than the same bone in the equally giant Giganotosaurus and Spinosaurus. Obviously proportions are different, but I think you get the idea of how massive it was. Thanks, Mr. Man. So now we have 2 species of Tyrannosaurus, but I recall there being a paper a while ago saying there were 3. So are there 4 now? Didn't a bunch of scientists push back on that paper? Well, yes. The evidence used by the Greg Paul team to name the 2 new species of Tyrannosaurus wasn't quite solid enough for there to be a widely agreed upon consensus. However, the new team that named Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis obviously thinks their evidence is strong enough to justify the difference in species. Contrary to a lot of the online discourse, most paleontologists don't dispute the possibility and frankly, reality of multiple species of the Tyrannosaurus genus. However, they just had issues with the evidence used to differentiate Tyrannosaurus rex from Paul's team's Tyrannosaurus regina and Tyrannosaurus imperator. So, regardless of the specificities, there were multiple species of Tyrannosaurus. This idea has been bandied about for many decades, and nothing solid can be said one way or the other quite yet, thanks to the spottiness of the fossils involved. Plenty juvenile tyrannosaur remains have been assigned to Tyrannosaurus rex, or unique genera, your Nanotyrannuses and Stygivenators. Then you've got the Texan Javelina tyrannosaur, and you even have one anomalous specimen from the North Horn Formation, plus this new Tyrannosaurus mcraeensis. What people thought was an enduring singular species of tyrant lizard king may be a complex of as many as 6 species over time and space. As wild as that may be to many, this only touches the surface. Look at big cats today. There are 5 externally extremely different looking species within the genus Panthera, with plenty of extinct ones that lived alongside these 5. Tyrannosaurus rex is just one species of one genus, the most well-studied species of extinct animal ever. Imagine how much else that's been misunderstood with less charismatic animals such as ammonites, trilobites, foraminifera, and fossil pollen. If we're underestimating the variety of one of the best researched ancient species, how many other things are overlooked? For more interesting stories about nature, the history of life, or what goes bump in the night, subscribe, like this video, drop a comment in the comment section below, and hit the bell icon to stay in the know with everything Edge. Thanks for watching.